In 1985, Crispin Glover played George McFly in Back to the Future Part 1. In Back to the Future Part 2, it would appear to a casual audience member that Glover had reprised his role. He hadn't. Through the use of existing footage, and including as part of the story that the character would be strung upside down on this weird device, audiences were successfully convinced by another actor. This is a brilliant technique. I think it should be used in all cases of recast actors, just to avoid the new actor distracting from the story. Glover had declined to sign on to the film due largely to financial disputes, but it appeared the studio had found a creative workaround. Well, at least until a later lawsuit where Universal Studios settled to paying Glover something around $760,000. Far more than if they just paid him to return. In the late 80s, prosthetics were really the only way to recycle an actor's likeness. In the mid-2010s, the reality of digitally creating humans has made this debate far more contentious. In 2016, with the release of Rogue One, we saw Peter Cushing seemingly reprise his role as Tarkin. Cushing had died more than 20 years earlier, yet here he was, looking exactly as he did in the 1977 original film. Hollywood seems all too eager to move forward in creating digital faces on screen. However, it seems to be something commentators have taken issue with. I, however, am not one of these people. So, for my first upload, I want to talk about why I think this technology is worth embracing and why I don't share many of people's concerns. People who seem bothered by this technology cite a few reasons. For starters, is that the technology really isn't 100% there yet. There are also concerns about the ethics of this technology, to use an actor's likeness against theirs or their descendants' will. Or perhaps even more abstractly, that there's a kind of violation being committed here, that reanimating particularly deceased actors is creepy and just kind of wrong.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! Oh, in the name of God! Now I know what it feels like to be God!
So let's start with the argument that this technology really isn't quite there yet. It's come a long way, but most of the time it shows up, it seems to fall right into the depths of the uncanny valley. For those of you unfamiliar with this term, let me explain. If you have human-like characters that are far enough away from looking entirely human, like say, yours truly, or perhaps other, lesser cartoon characters, they all seem totally fine and not at all creepy. But just before these characters become entirely human, there's a massive valley where they're almost human, and something just seems a little off. That's why we're able to so effectively create, say, apes on film, but humans are really tricky, because we're so attuned to what a human is meant to look like. The reason I'm not that receptive to this argument is simple, because this technology is in its early stages. This is the case with just about any new technology in film. There will always be films that have to push the bounds of what we're able to do. They have to take risks, and sometimes taking risks means things aren't going to work out. But this technology needs to be used in films to motivate it moving forward. Consider the use of CGI technology more generally. If it were not for the early adopters creating stuff that today looks like a massive flaming turd, the technology would not have moved ahead to look far better a decade later. Seeing big budget films that still sink into the uncanny valley is likely a temporary thing. Maybe it will make some of these effects seem a little dated in a few years, but we will get there. Consider this. For an awfully long time, when films would use blue screen to composite an actor over a background, the process would leave a thin black line surrounding the subject. If you look for it in many older films, it becomes very noticeable. But it allowed the filmmaker to tell the story they wanted, and it was something that the audiences of the time were willing to put up with. Audiences today would be far less forgiving of bad blue or green screening, because we know it's easy to do and have seen it done right so many times before. So here's my prediction. Just like audiences today will not suspend their disbelief that a character is where the film puts them unless it's done so in a realistic manner, I don't think audiences in the future will be nearly as willing to accept multiple actors playing the one role. Today, this most often occurs when recasting younger or older versions of the same character. Take for instance the X-Men franchise. They just want you to accept that old Professor X is Patrick Stewart and young Professor X is James McAvoy. Now this is easier to accept than if young Professor X was played by, say, Jonah Hill. Nevertheless, we all know that you don't get from this to this just with age, unless you're some kind of mutant. Wait. This is what a young Patrick Stewart actually looks like. And according to this app, this is what an old James McAvoy would look like. And as we all know, these apps are very scientific. We don't care that they don't look exactly the same, because if the movie's good, we just go with it. Take Westworld, for instance. Now, major Westworld Season 1 spoiler ahead, skip forward if you haven't seen it. Okay, still here? Good. We find out that William is the Man in Black. He is a younger version of Ed Harris's character. A twist I never saw coming. I never saw coming because the slow passage of time does this to you and not this. This was something that audience members just accepted because, until recently, it was the only way to tell a story. Westworld is an interesting example because it uses both techniques. It asks you to just go with it for the Man in Black, but for Anthony Hopkins' character, we see his younger phase created digitally. Now, there is a little bit of uncanny valley there, perhaps, but you're just trading out one suspension of disbelief for another. So, as this technology advances, I think there'll be a shift away from just recasting. In fact, recasting I think will be a major thing that dates a lot of films made today. One thing that I've noticed is that in most cases where digital characters are used, rather than recasting, it's for very limited screen time. I think this is for two reasons. The first being, it's still really expensive and time-consuming to create digital faces. The second is the fact that if you're only doing it for a few scenes, you don't want to devote the time to establish that this guy, you see this guy? Yep. This guy here? Yep. All right, you see, that's him, just younger. If we use digital characters, we just know immediately. So why can't we just recast actors if there are a million examples where we just accept it? Because it takes time and it can be kind of jarring for films to make audiences know that two people are meant to be one and the same. This is probably why Rogue One uses a digital Tarkin, but the new Han Solo movie has us accept that Han Solo looks like this now. So as this technology progresses, we may see it just start to become the norm for younger versions of characters really to look like that character's younger self, and not just have to accept that the character's been recast. Actors still have a right to their own likeness, so concerns about them getting screwed over and dropped halfway through the shooting in favour of a digital replacement, I think are fairly unfounded. Just look at the Back to the Future 2 case. Which brings me to the final concern that people have with this technology. That is, its use outside of entertainment. The ability to create fake videos showing people doing things that they never did. This has got a lot of people very worried, but not me. The ability to fake video, and audio for that matter, is just one way people are able to create unreliable records. It's not a new thing creating fake records of people. We've been able to do it with photography for years now. For instance, here is Barack Obama eating a baby. We all know this isn't real, I think. It would have been really easy when Photoshop was released to go, now they're going to be fake photos everywhere. People's lives are going to be ruined because somebody photoshopped them doing something bad, like eating a baby. We've accepted that we live in a world where photos can be fake, so we just have to be more scrupulous with them. If the New York Times has a front page, Obama, the baby eater, we'll take it more seriously than if it just shows up on some random's Twitter. The point is, we're able to deal with the fact that you can fake images, and there's no reason a similar view won't be taken towards video. You will ask, is it believable? Can you trust the source? And use technology to spot signs that it's been doctored. And then as for it being almost a kind of moral violation to bring back dead actors on screen, I think it's mostly that we're just not really used to this in video form. I can draw a pretty lifelike picture of Shakespeare, and people don't say, can't you just let him rest in peace? What is this nonsense? Can't you just leave poor William alone? We have a bit of a tendency to see stuff done in video as something more, but at the end of the day, it really is just images. So at the end of that, I can say that digital people are not really something I'm worried about. There are some legitimate concerns, but for the most part, I think this is a wonderful new tool in storytelling. Hey everyone, that was my first upload to this new channel. I hope you liked it. Please give it a like and subscribe. I want to start uploading videos regularly. There'll be more stuff on film and television, but not just that, I'll be releasing videos on really just anything I find interesting, so stay tuned for more content.